courtroom was heavy with silence, the kind that presses down on your chest and makes breathing feel like a task. Every seat was filled. All eyes were fixed on the man at the center of it all. Sergeant Nathan Carter sat in his wheelchair, dressed in his military uniform. The medals on his chest glinted under the harsh fluorescent lights. His hand gripped the leash of the dog by his side, Thor, a German shepherd with a calm yet watchful demeanor. To everyone else, Thor looked like just another military working dog. But to Nathan, he was so much more. He was family. Nathan's jaw tightened as the judge addressed him, reminding him that this might be his final chance to speak. The army had decided Thor was to be reassigned, considered government property, needed for another mission. After everything they'd been through together, after all the times they'd risked their lives for each other, losing Thor now felt like a cruel betrayal. Nathan's hands trembled as he adjusted his grip on the leash. His voice, barely steady, cracked as he began. "Your Honor," he said, his tone raw with emotion. "Thor isn't just a military asset. He saved my life in ways no one here could ever understand. On the battlefield, he pulled me from danger, shielded me from gunfire, warned me of traps before I could see them. And when I came home, when I couldn't even look at myself in the mirror, Thor was there. He gave me a reason to keep going." Nathan paused. "Please, don't take him from me." The room remained still, air thick with unspoken sympathy. Some spectators wiped their eyes. Others exchanged glances, their expressions torn between pity and outrage. The judge's face stayed neutral, eyes locked on Nathan, until he slowly leaned forward, preparing to deliver his ruling. But before he could speak, something happened. Thor stood up. He yanked the leash free from Nathan's trembling hands and moved quickly toward the bench, barking sharply, his voice echoing through the room. The crowd gasped. The bailiff stepped forward on instinct, but Thor showed no signs of aggression. His barks were sharp, insistent, purposeful. Nathan's heart dropped. "Thor," he called, panic rising in his voice. But deep down, he knew. He had seen this before, many times. Thor wasn't just barking. He was alerting. Something was wrong. The murmurs in the courtroom grew louder. "What's wrong with the dog?" someone whispered from the back. Nathan wheeled himself forward, his voice trembling. "He's not just barking. He only does this when there's danger." The judge froze, his gavel still in hand. The room fell silent again, except for Thor, barking, relentless, like a warning heartbeat. Each bark echoed off the dark wooden walls, sharp, urgent, cutting through the silence like a blade. Thor's body was low, his muscles tense, ears pinned back, eyes locked on the judge's bench. Nathan's hands gripped the armrests of his wheelchair. This wasn't panic. This wasn't confusion. This was instinct. Thor had detected something. Nathan's heart pounded, adrenaline surging, like in the old days, like war. But this wasn't the battlefield. This was supposed to be a courtroom, a place of order. "Thor, heel!" Nathan called, voice firm, but shaking. Thor glanced back at him briefly. His stare was sharp, controlled, as if telling Nathan, "I've got this." Then Thor turned back to the judge's bench and began pacing in short, deliberate steps, his barks shifting into low, guttural growls that rippled through the air. The audience began murmuring again, the earlier sympathy shifting into something else. Unease. "Mr. Carter," the judge said, irritation creeping into his voice. "Control your dog, or I will have to—" "Your Honor," Nathan interrupted. Low. "Thor isn't misbehaving. He's trained to detect threats, bombs, explosives. He wouldn't act like this unless something's wrong." Another hush fell over the room. The atmosphere changed. No longer skeptical. Now afraid. And then, just as suddenly as it began, Thor stopped barking. The silence hit like a thunderclap. His body locked up, eyes darting to the far end of the room. His head turned. A low, chilling growl rolled from his chest. The judge froze mid-sentence. Every head in the courtroom turned toward the large wooden doors. Something was out there. Nathan's breathing quickened, his pulse roaring in his ears. He had seen this before, seconds before Thor found a buried IED or warned of an enemy hiding just beyond sight. This wasn't overreaction. This was instinct. "Thor," Nathan whispered, gripping the leash again. "What is it?" But the dog didn't move. His body was a statue. His growl deepened, vibrating through the floor. Whatever was coming, it wasn't just about Nathan anymore. It was a threat to everyone in that room. The low growl from Thor filled the courtroom like distant thunder, freezing everyone in place. Every eye was locked on the dog. Tense, focused. Even the judge, who just moments ago was ready to scold Nathan, now sat still, visibly unnerved. His gavel hung limply in his hand. He exchanged a glance with the bailiffs, silent, uneasy. The air felt electric, like before a storm. Nathan's hands clutched the armrests of his wheelchair, bracing for something, though he didn't know what. He had been here before, on battlefields where one wrong breath meant disaster. And Thor's instincts had never been wrong. One of the bailiffs, tall and broad-shouldered, finally moved. His steps slow, one hand resting on the holstered weapon at his side. "It's just a dog," he muttered, almost to himself. But his voice trembled. Still he walked toward Thor. "Stop!" Nathan called out, his voice cutting through the room. "Don't treat this like noise. Don't treat him like just a dog. He's trained to sense things we can't see." The judge looked from Nathan to the bailiff, his jaw tight. Finally, he gave a small nod. "Check the hallway," he ordered quietly. The bailiff stepped toward the door. Thor's growl deepened. The taller man hesitated, then reached for the handle, hand trembling just slightly. The room held its breath. He pulled. The door creaked open. Darkness. A long, dim hallway stretched beyond. Quiet. Still. But Thor's barking exploded again. Violent. Urgent. Louder than ever. His claws scraped against the tile as he lunged toward the open door, leash pulling tight in Nathan's grip. Gasps echoed across the courtroom. The larger bailiff reached for his gun. "What the hell was that?" he snapped. A sharp, metallic clang rang from the hallway, loud, sudden, unmistakable. The smaller bailiff jumped, his flashlight jerking wildly. Thor barked again, feral, relentless, trying to bolt forward, held back only by Nathan's desperate grip. "Get him back!" someone shouted. Nathan's voice rose over the chaos. "He's never wrong!" he yelled. "Something's coming!" The metallic clang rang out again. Louder, closer. The air shifted, thick, charged with something unseen. Something real. Thor barked like he was trying to stop time itself. Nathan felt it too. A weight in his gut. A dread he hadn't felt since Afghanistan. This wasn't over. It hadn't even started. The hallway looked empty. But Thor didn't stop barking. If anything, He got louder, more frantic. His body strained forward, claws scraping the floor, eyes locked on something invisible. Nathan's knuckles went white from holding the leash so tight. And then, a shadow moved. Just a flicker. Barely there. But enough. The smaller bailiff stumbled back, flashlight beam snapping wildly through the hallway. "There!" he shouted, voice high with panic. "There's something there!" The larger bailiff froze, his gun raised, aimed toward the darkness. Thor barked again, more violently than before, almost dragging Nathan forward in his chair. "Get out of there!" Nathan shouted, his voice sharp with urgency. The judge slammed his gavel. "Order! Order in the court!" But the sound was lost, swallowed by the rising fear. Spectators were rising from their seats. Shouts, movement, confusion spreading like wildfire. And then, from deep in the corridor, came a sound no one expected. A footstep. Slow, deliberate, not hurried, not afraid, coming closer. Thor's barking changed. It turned into a snarl, deep and guttural, primal. Nathan's heart pounded. He could feel it now. Everyone could. Whatever was coming wasn't hiding. It wanted to be seen. The footstep echoed louder. Each click of a boot hitting tile, slicing through the panic like a razor. The larger bailiff stood frozen, gun raised. His partner's flashlight darted along the hallway walls, chasing shadows, catching nothing. Nathan shouted again, "Get out of there, now!" But the larger bailiff didn't move. He stared into the dark corridor, jaw clenched, waiting. Another shadow moved, this time slow, purposeful, unmistakable. The smaller bailiff gasped. "There's someone there," he whispered. The flashlight flickered, just enough to reveal it. A figure, tall, still, just standing at the edge of the beam. Then gone, melting back into the dark. But it was enough. The air in the courtroom turned to ice. Thor lunged again, snarling, pulling so hard Nathan nearly lost his grip. And then, from the shadows, a man stepped forward. He stepped into the light slowly, calmly, almost too calmly. A man, tall. His hood was pulled low over his face, casting shadows that hid his features. His hands were tucked in his pockets. His posture? Relaxed. Unnervingly so. He stopped just at the edge of the flashlight's beam, head tilted, as if amused by the scene in front of him. Thor's snarl deepened, feral now, raw, claws scraping the tile, muscles coiled like a spring. Nathan held the leash with both hands, sweat gathering in his palms. "Who are you?" the larger bailiff demanded, weapon trained directly on the figure. No answer. The man took another slow step forward, and in the dim light, beneath the shadow of his hood, the faintest smirk appeared. Nathan's breath caught in his chest. Something about him felt wrong. Not just threatening. Wrong. Deeply, fundamentally wrong. The bailiffs tensed, both of them now with weapons drawn. The man raised his hands, slowly. "Relax," he said. His voice was low, calm, chillingly confident. But the way he said it, the way those words lingered in the air, made the room feel colder. Nathan felt it in his bones. This man was lying. And Thor knew it too. The growls coming from him now were constant, low and vibrating. The judge stood, his hand gripping the gavel like it was the only thing keeping him steady. "Step back," he ordered. "Bailiffs, remove him now." But the man didn't flinch, didn't move, didn't even blink. Instead, he slowly pulled something from his coat pocket. Metal. Small. The bailiffs shouted in unison, "Drop it!" Gasps erupted across the courtroom, but the man didn't drop it. Instead, he held it up and smiled. "It's just a key," he said. The metal glinted in the flickering light, but Nathan's gut twisted. There was no relief, no sense of safety. Thor didn't stop, didn't even pause, and the dread in the room became unbearable. The stranger raised the key higher. Then, with a sharp metallic click, he turned it. The sound was small, but the effect, instant. The courtroom lights flickered. Once, twice, then total darkness. Gasps filled the void. Chairs scraped violently against the floor. People stumbled, reaching for phones, for loved ones, for anything. Nathan couldn't see, but he could hear. Footsteps, shouts, the door creaking open again. And over it all, Thor, barking, ferocious, relentless. Then the lights snapped back on. But the man was no longer alone. Two more figures stood behind him, shadowy, silent, faces obscured. Their presence undeniable and terrifying. They moved with purpose, slowly stepping into the courtroom. Each held a weapon, gleaming, metallic, enough to silence the entire room with dread. Thor growled, deeper than before, primal. Nathan's blood turned. It wasn't just about him. This was a mission, and Thor was the target. The judge slammed his gavel again. "Everyone, stay calm!" But his voice was drowned out by the rising panic. Spectators surged toward the exits, voices rising, chairs toppling. The stranger stepped forward, calm as ever. His hood still low, his smirk still there. "No one needs to get hurt," he said, his voice smooth, measured. "But the dog, he's coming with me." The words cut through the noise like a razor. Thor snarled, his stance low and ready, not budging. Nathan's hand tightened on the leash. "You're not taking him," he said, voice firm, steady. "He's not just a dog, he's my partner, my family." The stranger tilted his head slightly. "You're making this harder than it needs to be," he said. "You know what he is. You know what he can do." Nathan's jaw clenched. "I don't care what you think he is. He's staying with me." The room fell into a tense. Thor stood like a statue, eyes locked on the stranger, growling low, a warning that could shake bone. Nathan sat tall in his chair, unflinching, unwavering. "You'll have to go through both of us," he said, his voice ringing through the courtroom like steel. The stranger's smirk faltered, just for a second. He studied Nathan, really studied him. Then he turned his head toward Thor. "That dog," he said softly. "He's special, isn't he?" His tone changed, darker now, less amused, more fascinated. "Always knows what's coming. That's what makes him valuable." Nathan's blood turned to ice. "How do you know that?" he demanded. But the stranger didn't answer. He just raised the key again, slowly, holding it between two fingers. "You'll find out soon enough." Then he stepped back. The two figures behind him didn't move at first, but then, with a small nod from their leader, they followed him toward the same doors they came from. The judge, finally regaining his voice, called out, "You've disrupted a court of law. This ends now. Bailiffs, escort them." But it was already over. The stranger paused at the doorway. He looked back over his shoulder one last time. "This isn't about the dog," he said coldly. "This is much bigger than that." His smirk returned, but now it was sharper, hollow. "And we'll be back." Then they were gone, vanished into the corridor. The tension snapped like a stretched wire finally breaking. People exhaled. Some sat. Others whispered in hushed panic. The judge sank into his chair, his gavel falling to the bench with a weak thud. "This court is adjourned," he said, barely above a whisper. But Nathan didn't move. Thor finally sat down at his side, still alert, but quiet now. Nathan reached down, brushing his hand gently over Thor's head. "You did good, buddy," he murmured, his voice thick with emotion. The courtroom slowly emptied, voices trailing off into confusion and speculation. But Nathan stayed, staring at the door, at the space where the stranger had stood. He didn't know who that man was or what exactly he wanted, but he knew one thing with absolute certainty. This wasn't over. And whatever was coming, he and Thor would face it, together. Because their bond wasn't just forged in war, it was unbreakable. And no one, not even the shadows, could take that away. And if this story moved you, even just for a moment, don't forget to leave a comment and let us know what you felt. Subscribe to the channel for more powerful, true-to-life stories like this one. And please, give this video a like. It helps more people discover stories that matter. Because sometimes, one bark, one voice, one story can change everything.